So a while back, I restored a 1941 Philco radio, and this was the loudspeaker. And ever since I got this radio, the speaker has been tinny. Doesn't sound good at all. So I replaced it with another speaker, and now the tone is good. But I wanted to keep this speaker, and if I could repair it, put it back in at a later date. So I've been looking at what I could do to restore this speaker, and I decided to sacrifice another speaker which is exactly the same size, and just change the cones. This speaker, it has a good transformer, matching transformer, and the field coil is good, and you might not be able to see very well there. The spider is okay. It's just that someone had cemented it all the way down and it barely moves, very stiff. So I'm going to try this. I've never done it before, so let's have a go at it and see if I can transfer one cone to the other. It's coming off pretty good with an X-Acto knife. That part over there I gibbled up a bit, but that'll come together with glue. Cutting down and removing all the speaker cement is not easy. So I have to do it very carefully so I don't do any damage to this part. I've got the old cone completely separated from the frame. So the next thing is I'm going to be very careful. I think I'll take a pair of scissors and just cut around here, because I don't want to get any of the wires that go to the speaker coil. Here I'm cutting the speaker in little sections so I don't get those wires. So you have to be really careful around this area because those are the wires there that go to the voice coil. So from now on I'll have to be really careful. The other side, not so much. But I don't know how much of this I can take down. I'll have to really examine it under a good light to see where the wires go. I'm in luck. The spider is intact and the voice coil, show that in better light there, is coming off easily. So I won't have to do much cutting. I'm going to have to really be careful breaking off those black bits of gunk. And I'm going to have a bit of scraping and cleaning to get all the old junk out from underneath everything. I've been very careful removing the black junk, and I've removed most of it. I think I'm just going to leave it like that. And because if you do that you don't do it carefully, you're going to interfere with the movement of the spider. This here is the spider, and this is the voice coil around a permanent, actually it's not, it's an electromagnet that's formed by the field coil. So the basic structure of speakers hasn't changed since the 20s. So this late 30s speaker, early 40s, is very similar, almost identical to what we have today. So anyway, this seems to be moving pretty unimpeded. But even just one bit of grit in there will cause it to sound scratchy once everything's back together. So I have to be very careful. Just have a look in there. Looks pretty clean. There's a little bit of black over there. I'm gonna gently stick something in there and see if I can loosen it. After a lot of work, I've got most of the gunk off the speaker frame, and I think I've got enough off there so it'll glue the new cone on. Let's have a look down there. Yeah, it looks pretty good. I think I'm okay there. So I've cleaned the frame off with alcohol, and it looks like all the gunk's removed. So next I'm going to take off the cone of this donor speaker. Taking the cone off intact in the donor speaker is going to be really difficult. So I'll have to be very, very careful, because this one has the wires that go up under the speaker paper. So I'm going to have to be very careful. I'll probably end up removing the cone and the voice coil. It seems the further I scrape down to the metal, I can't really see where the transition is. I guess the black paper was put up right underneath, just in the small little ring here, under the paper ring. Looks like it's a bit of black underneath there. So what I think I'll do is I will just cut this around here to make it quicker, and then I'll cement the black cone onto the new speaker. But I'll have to think of what I'm doing all along, because this is a bit different from the other speakers. So I'll have to kind of plan as I go along. I've cut the speaker all around, and you can see it comes up like that. So I want to remove this, and that's going to be difficult to do without damaging. I don't care about this voice coil, but I want to keep it as narrow as possible so I can cement it onto that new voice coil in the other speaker. So I'll think about this for a while. I remembered an old trick that I used to do when I was a kid, when I used to take apart old transistor radio speakers. I used to hit them on the back, and then everything comes apart, and you get the voice coil. But there's a thing that you have to cut. It's I don't know what you call it. Maybe it's a spider. You might call that the spider. It's very different from the spider in the other one, but it just holds the speaker cone in alignment. So you have to cut that out. And speaker has got a couple of tears in it. I've tried to be as careful as possible, but it's very difficult not to do some rips. But those rips can be fixed with a little bit of cement. So anyway, I've got it mostly out, and I'm going to trim it and see how it fits the other one. I've trimmed down most of the spider on the back of the speaker. I don't want to go very much closer, or I might break off more of the paper. So I don't think that'll interfere with anything. But unfortunately, there's a little tear in it. I'll have to fix that. But it seems to fit fairly good. The cone is a little small, as I had to cut the rings out. But I think if I cut a piece of paper to allow it to extend it and glue that piece of paper onto here, put it between here and here, and then put the ring on. I think that will make it stick in there quite well. And then once I've got it the right size, then first I will glue it here. I'll glue it down here to the spider assembly, and then I will glue it on the outside. I was looking for some paper that I could extend the cone with and glue it onto the frame. And the paper that I found that is most like speaker paper is the craft type paper that they make paper shopping bags out of. So I'm cutting a piece of that paper so that it will fit the frame, and I will glue that on and also glue it onto the cone. First I will glue it onto the cone, of course, and then I will glue it onto the frame, and we'll glue the center part to the spider and the coil. I'm measuring the width of what the paper will be cut to, and it's 101 millimeters. I've cut a piece of paper that's larger than the cone, and that's what I'm going to glue onto the cone. So I'm going to cut a circle around about 20 millimeters in, and that'll give the cone a fair amount of paper to adhere to. I've drawn 20 millimeters in lines, and I've joined them all together. And I'm going to cut along that circle. It's a rough circle, but it doesn't matter. I just want something to glue to. Here I've cut the cone extender out, and I'll glue the cone to the middle like that. And then if it overlaps, I might just trim it on the other side. But in the meantime, I'm just going to glue it. Here I've applied glue liberally to the speaker cone, and the next step is gluing it to the piece I cut out. The cone has been glued to the extender, and now I'm going to glue the cone loosely to the spider. Here I've glued the cone to the spider and moving coil assembly, and these parts of the extender piece I'm going to leave unglued until that has glued and set. Then I will do underneath here, and I'll clamp it. Oh, incidentally, if you wonder what type of glue I'm using an all-purpose contact cement. So here I've glued the final, this part here to the frame, and once it dries, I'm going to try the speaker out and probably take a very fine pair of scissors and trim this just to make it look a bit better. But I'll see if it works first. Earlier I'd said I was going to clamp it, but it seems to be sticking quite well. I'm just going to put another speaker on it to keep everything in place. And that should dry quite well. And we'll try it next time and see, we'll try it in the actual radio and see how the speaker works. Here I've re-glued the rim, around the speaker. That gives it a bit more stability. And I'm just going to wait for it to dry. I'm going to take a very, very fine pair of scissors and I'm going to cut this down as much as I can. It's very, very precise work, so I have to do it very slowly. Here I've cut the extended part right down as close as I can to the original speaker cone. And now I am going to paint it black to go with the speaker so that it blends in as much as possible. I'm using a quick drying acrylic based paint which blends in well. It's absorbed into the paper and it turns kind of a dull black, which will blend in with the speaker cone, this is what I want it to look like once it dries. Here's the speaker all painted up and ready to be tested. So here I've hooked up the rebuilt speaker with alligator clips inside the radio, and I'm bypassing the speaker that is in there, and it seems to be working very well. The tone is very good.
33 are expected this week. Most of Ontario is under heat warnings too, with it feeling as hot as 38 once you factor.
What's that, Jamie? True. That's totally true.
So anyway, the next step is to put this rebuilt speaker inside the radio, and it should work really well. So here's the rebuilt speaker mounted inside the chassis of the radio. Now all I have to do is put the 4 wires back in and connect it to the radio itself. What makes you think might just take a 15-minute job connecting 4 wires ends up taking an hour, because you have to scrape off most of these radios, the wiring. When you scrape it off and you try and solder it, it won't run, so you have to scrape the wires and then resolder them. Takes 15-minute job, takes an hour. When you're working on a radio that's 85 years old, quite often the wires are rotten, and they just, when you move it, the wire just crumbles. So here's a perfect example of that. I had replaced a lot of these rotten pieces of wire the last video that I did about this radio, but I didn't notice that one, so I don't know why. I'll just replace it. It's not that long. So there's the piece I replaced. You can see that new solder joints all the way up here, and now it looks a lot better down there. So the radio, I've installed the speaker. It sounds really good, and got good volume. Sounds much better than it did ever before since I got this radio. Even when I put the big speaker in, it didn't sound as good as this. So I'm glad I rebuilt that speaker and it was successful. So this is a success.